everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Gonçalves, and today we have a special group of ladies, and I will let each one of them introduce themselves. So, Dayna, would you like to start?
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Dayna Louise, and I'm a psychic medium here in rural New South Wales, Central West New South Wales in Australia.
Liliana?
Hi, my name is Liliana Biesterveld. I am a evidential medium and psychic and also a Reiki master. And I'm originally from Mexico, but I am here in the US in LA. Very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Maria.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have everybody here. And Christine?
My name's Christine, and I am an evidential medium and a psychic, and I'm in Canada.
Nice. And Keshette?
Hello, everyone. My name is Keshette Burton. My business is Soul Connections. Soul Connections with Keshette. I had to think about that for a minute, being put on the spot. I am also an evidential medium and have psychic abilities, and I'm currently in Dallas, Texas.
Beautiful. And Michelle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Falcone with Come Home to Your Heart with Michelle. I am an evidential medium, a psychic, energy worker, and I am in Ohio in the US.
Oh, nice. So today I brought together these amazing group of women to talk about grief because I know with the holidays coming up, for some, maybe it's the first time you've lost somebody, so you're really struggling with how do I deal with this? So today we're just having a casual conversation about it. If you need more help, like go seek services. But today it's just listening in and seeing how each one of us is coping with different types of grief within our family. So, Dayna, would you like to start?
When I was thinking about this topic, it did remind me of a lady that I'd read for a couple of years ago that suffered a number of losses just prior to the Christmas season. And I recall the pressure that she felt about what she should do for Christmas Day, and was really overwhelmed by that because she was you've just suffered a loss of a loved one, and it's devastating. But she had this pressure on her of where she should go, how long she should go for. She really didn't feel like doing anything. And I think the biggest thing was giving her permission. There's no should. You've just lost, the most precious thing, it feels like at that time. And being expected to turn up to a family occasion or an event. I mean, everything shifts and changes. Christmas comes around next year. And I think it's about giving yourself permission that you don't have to show up and do the exact same thing. You can literally change the way that you do Christmas, and giving the person that's going through that acute loss permission to recreate how Christmas is done. I think it's really important being able to say no, thank you. And look, everyone tries to do, and I'm even guilty of that myself. Well, you must come to my house, not wanting her to be alone or whatnot. But really, she's the expert in her own grief, as David Kessler would say. She really tells me how she needs to grieve and what's right for her. So I think just remembering, if we've got anyone around us has suffered loss, like yourself, Maria, that's really just so recently. And giving yourself permission just to do it the way you need to do it, and finding ways, I think, to honor the love we have for our loved ones, and doing it our way, because you're the person going through your grief. It's no one else's grief. It's yours. It's personal. You have that love bond and that connection. You have all the memories, and it's your own unique connection, and stay true to that, and make choices about how you choose to show up and honor your loved one.
I love that, because when you were talking about that client, like I find, like, as you guys know, I'm Portuguese. So with Portuguese, there's a lot of customs that we have after somebody passes away. Like, this color red makes me happy, but it is a no for a whole year. I should technically be in black, but that's going to make me sad and depressed. So I don't want to do that, because then you're not wearing it because it makes you feel good. You're wearing it because you have to. And I don't like that. But yeah, but those things are hard. Like I'm in that space of I have to do what feels right for me. And I hear the judgments within the community of she's wearing color. It's like, yes, I am wearing color and the sky's not going to fall and my dad's still going to heaven. And there is this tradition after somebody passes, you have to have the 7th-day mass. Then you have to have the 30-day mass. And if you don't have a 30-day mass done in the seminaries, oh no, where will his soul go? And I've had these conversations with families like, his soul's on the other side. He's good. He's safe. But it is interesting because I find communities, they'll struggle depending on where you grow up with the traditions that you grow up. It'll be like, oh, she's doing it different. It's like, yeah, and it will be okay. So honoring that about ourselves, like, what does everybody else think about that?
Well,
Right. Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay. Actually, I was just gonna say, Maria, that in Mexico we have very similar traditions. You wear the black, for a long period of time. I don't see that it's happening as much. I think is maybe the following couple of weeks, not as except for the older people. But we have those rosaries that and I do feel that they are helpful. They can actually do something for them, and I think it has to do also with that little group of people that um gather together to pray and to honor the person that passed. And that's how we do it in my house too. Just like you were mentioning. you know um so I think that there is good to that. I also feel, I was going to say, that community, I feel that there is a big difference. I know people that are going through a big loss, could be a child, which is, I think, the biggest loss. I think doing it with a group, doing it with a community. And I also know people, that acquaintances that are doing it alone, and I see and I hear such a big difference. But anyways, for me, I think that the best thing I can think of doing for others is to listen. Just listen. Right?
Just holding space, like what do they need what do they need right now for their healing without the judgment of you should be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then also honoring people's traditions, right? Like
Right.
with my dad, we have a lot of masses being said, a lot of prayers and stuff, which is beautiful, honoring that. But I think also recognizing, but then it's my belief system, right? Because I'm a medium and with spirituality, so I know the moment he took his last breath here, he's in the spirit world and he's safe. And he didn't go off to hell, and he's not there waiting for me to pray for him to get out of hell, to get his ticket to go to, like, I don't believe in that. Like, I believe like once he's passed, he's safe. He's on the other side and he's good. And he's with family and they're celebrating his arrival in heaven and he's really good. So yeah, honoring the traditions that feel right for you, just like Dayna had mentioned too.
Hmm.
So Keshette, you wanted to say something.
Oh, yes. So going back to doing what's right for yourself, I've um, come to know that each passing that you experience is a different level and feeling of grief, depending on the type of closeness or distance you had with that person. And so there's no right or wrong in what that grief looks like, how long it takes. And as you guys touched on, most importantly, you yourself are experiencing that pretty much alone. No one else can tell you how to feel, tell you, they know exactly what you're going through. There can be people that relate, but at the core of it all, you kind of are going through it alone in your own process. And it's so important that you honor that you honor loving yourself and that space that you're in, and to not force yourself to do things that are uncomfortable because other people expect you to.
Yeah. How about you, Christine?
Oh, yeah, I've had quite a year. I've had I'm up to 19 funerals in this total year. So it's been a lot of loss. Significantly, both my parents, 3 months apart, and then a good friend of mine um, just right after that. So yes, it's been pretty heavy laden. So just as you think you're kind of rebuilding from one, you're hit with another, and then another, and then another. So um, it's been challenging to honor where you are in each of those griefs. And I do agree with you, Keshette, like every loss is different and it feels different. And then there was like almost like a numbness walking to another funeral home. And even the one funeral home is where I had my parents. It's just, I'm going through the motion of it all, but not really absorbing what's happening. So I think a lot in the grief, especially into holidays, is simple rest and honoring where you are. And the rest is important because we can distract ourselves. And I'm noticing a lot of distractions. I'll go and do this and this. But it's the sadness that's going to come in. And I think we have to walk through that process, have the cry, have the memories. But I also learn with spirit too is the good memories. Oh my gosh, I remember that. Or even just getting ready for Christmas is the Christmas traditions. My mom her favorite holiday was Christmas. It was over the top. And so even just going through her Christmas decorations and having memories, and it's making me laugh, it's making me smile, and I feel her closer. And it's like, you know what? And as a medium, we know where they are, we know they're safe, but them coming close to us in the happier times is so much more important too. That we have to allow ourselves to be happy, remembering a funny story and laughing about it, or in going down that and just feeling a little bit lighter is also part of the healing too. And I think if we rest our grief, we witness our grief, we rest it, and then we can also see some highlights of that too. And I think that's really important that we don't judge that. Or we don't judge others that have lost, and maybe they're laughing, or maybe they're going out for dinner. Or we don't judge that because that's part of their healing too.
And can I just touch on that, Christine, because I think that's an important point. Losses, and I had a child who was very ill as a baby, and whilst I'm fortunate and blessed that she made it through her treatment, I remember distinctly all the other losses associated around Christmas, because I was in hospital for Christmas and she was having a bone marrow transplant. But I remember there was a grief around what we would normally be doing or who would be sitting around. And then I had the grief of actually, or guilt. I want to say guilt, that if I laughed or was normal, I felt guilty. How can I feel any joy when my child is going through that? So, and I think that relates to the grieving process too as well. How can I enjoy this day? How can I have this moment when I've just lost this, really important person to me?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? As you move through any sort of grieving process, you think you kind of come out the other side, and then you have this, you bottom out, and it grabs you out of the blue. You can be in the supermarket and a song comes on, and then next minute you're trying to recover down near the fruit and vegetable and get on and do your shop. So I think it's just being gentle and just allowing that, it's because it's pushing down those emotions. Grief will wait for you and it will catch up to you. And you might get busy and distracted and keep on doing, but it may be months down the track and the person may then revisit and go through that huge, grieving in that moment. So it looks different for everyone, but I think that's a really important point, that guilt around feeling joy, particularly around the Christmas season.
Oh, I like that you brought that up because I will hear that. It's like, oh, you're laughing? Why are you happy? It's like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And all the emotions, because I know at one point I felt I was so angry, and then I was so sad, and then it's a roller coaster, and then I'm like, why am I angry? And then tuning in and exploring that, but then the sadness, then at one point, which is weird, I felt like abandoned. And it's like, why do I feel abandoned? It's like, well, where'd it go? We're like, where's my dad? Now I'm alone. It's, even though I'm not, it's like really weird for me because I can only speak to my experience so far, and I'm still in that acute because he only passed away a few weeks ago, but it's the roller coaster of emotions that you get and you're not expecting. And then I've heard also the expression of when people lose both their parents that they feel like they're orphaned. So Christine, do you want to
Yeah.
speak to that?
You do feel orphaned. And I'll just speak specifically with parents, but and we know it's the natural course of life, certainly, right? But I think too, it's you do feel orphaned. You feel your parents know everything about you. They hold
Yeah.
all your memories. They know everything, and you don't have that anymore. Like you can't call your mom and say, "Hey, remember?" She doesn't have those memories. Hey, you got through this. She doesn't. She doesn't. You can ask, but it's not the same. And when they die, all that shuts down for you. And you do feel alone because every success, everything is shared with them. And now that's gone. And it's it's like the whole world just flips upside down and it's hollow. And you really you depend on your parents more than you realize. It's just the littlest things. And now that's not there. And having lost both of them in my mom was quite unexpected. No one saw that coming. And then 3 months later, my dad. And I cared for him to the end, but it was never resolving. Because even when I was caring for my dad, it was just that, oh, my mom will know. My mom knows where that is. She knows. And you depend on that, and then you just feel like a child again. Feel like a child again.
Christine, you've had such massive losses this year. How do you approach coming up to Christmas? Have you planned or thought about how you're going to do Christmas?
I have. And I had Christmas was very structured, like not structured, but there was a way we used to do things. I'm asking for help. I know Christmas Eve is going to be very hard because I used to go to mass and then have my parents and have Christmas Eve with them. I can't do that. I'm finding it very difficult to think that loss. So I'm going over to my sister-in-law's house. We're having like blending her family traditions with me. So making something new, but I'm out of the house. Well, my whole family will go over. It's something different, something new, and it's something fun. And I'm going to try that. And then I'm spending the Christmas day with my other brother that's here. My other brother lives in the States, but we're going to have Christmas together and we're going to still honor my parents. I did buy a new Christmas tree. That was not part of the grieving, but it was nice. But I had a hard time putting it together. So I did last night. I finally put all my mom's ornaments on it. And a picture of them's on it with she had 2 heart ornaments. And that's their tree. So it's just when I put the tree on when I get home from work, the lights are on and it's beautiful. It's just centered in the room. And I feel like that's just their lights with me. That's how I see it. So I'm just doing it that way. Each day is slow with that. But I think the traditions are keep what I want and change what I'm not ready to. But I not be alone.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, I changed up my Christmas tree this year. I was at Canadian Tire and they had these picture frames. Have you guys seen like the picture frames you put on your Christmas tree? So now my Christmas tree looks like an album. It's got happy memories of my dad, the grandkids, but then just like vacation moments. And now you look at the tree, it's like, oh, it's an album. But it's just like, and people come over and they're like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot when they were all like 5 years old, all the grandkids. So it just makes people smile. But I find it interesting about the Christmas tree. Did anybody else change their Christmas tree? Now I'm just curious. Keshette?
I didn't do mine this year.
Not yet?
No, I'm not going to.
Oh, okay.
I have gone through so many changes in the last couple of years, And I was pushing myself, which was fine in the moment. But this year, I've just gone through a lot of internal ups and downs, and I just didn't have it in me to put the tree up or to take the tree down.
Yeah.
And I think a difference also is I think putting up the tree and taking down the tree is much more enjoyable when you have people surrounding you that are creating those special moments, putting the music on and maybe having hot cocoa or champagne or whatever it is. And I just didn't have it in me. And I've actually spoken to quite a few people who also don't have it in them. And so it was nice um, finding each other and having that banter and acknowledging the okay. It's okay if you
Yeah.
don't do it the same or how you have been or what's expected of you or what you expect from yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And it's okay to change whatever it is you want to change that year because you're in that space and you have to honor that space.
I love that. Well said. Honor who you are. And Michelle, you're so quiet in the corner.
I'm just listening to all you guys, and I want to say, Christine, I'm so sorry for all of your losses. I've
Yes.
I've
Yeah.
lost both of my parents too, not nearly that close to each other, and it's been quite some time since I've had either one of them. Um, it's lovely that you put up your mom's Christmas ornaments and felt like you were ready to do that. You know, it just is like a testimonial to the connection and the love that you have with her. And the one thing that I wanted to say that we're kind of talking around, and that maybe some people don't know, is that there are 7 stages of grief, and they're not, you don't go through one and then you're done with it, and then you go to the next one and you're done with it. You experience them in whatever order, and you go backwards, and then you go forward a little bit, and you go backwards. And I just want to speak to that briefly, because I think maybe that's something that people don't necessarily know. Um, they do give them in order, but like I said, you don't necessarily experience them in that order. But the first stage is shock. The second is denial. The third is anger. The fourth is bargaining. The fifth is depression. The sixth is acceptance and hope. And the seventh is processing grief. And I think you can go down and then go back up, and wherever you happen to be in that process, you know, it's okay. And I also want to speak to people that are really struggling, like with their own health this Christmas, and feeling like maybe they're entering the process of um transitioning, or they're watching a loved one enter that process of transitioning. You know, it's, whatever you're feeling is okay. It's totally okay. It's there's no, you know, if we can stop judging ourselves and just be in the moment. And if you feel like you want to be around people, be around people. If you feel you don't want to be around people, don't be around people. Um, if you feel like you're falling into depression, reach out to a friend, reach out to a hotline, join a grief support system. There's so many people going through this right now. You know, ask somebody who's been through it. Um, and you know, I have a good friend whose mom is very, very ill this Christmas, and it has just been a roller coaster. I mean, it's been a roller coaster. She's been happy, and then she's been really angry, and you know, it's it's hard, and it can be really scary. And just, you know, if we can just love each other through it, and loving each other means whatever you're doing, I'm here for you. If you want me to wait over there, I'll wait over there. If you want me to be next to you and hold your hand, I'll be next to you and hold your hand. You know, if you just want to sit quietly with me, I'll sit quietly with you, whatever you want to do. But I just want to tell you know, people in general, you're not alone. And even after your loved one passes, or if your loved one has passed already, you truly are never, ever, ever alone. You're never alone.
That is beautifully said. So here's an interesting conversation I had the other day, and Christine was there. And we were talking about people dying, like you're physically dying alone, like your family can't make it there, or they left the room and they're alone. And then I had this moment of, are they actually alone? Because I know, like, when my dad passed away, we were there, my mom was there, I was there, and I heard his breathing. He did these two breaths, and I remember the palliative nurse saying, when you hear that, you know, he's closer, but I didn't realize it was going to happen that, like, right there. So I went to get the nurse to turn my back, and my dad had passed away. So he just waited for me to turn around, and then he passed away. But when I got the nurse, came back in the room, my mom's there, and it was full. It was so full of spirit, like the loved ones on the other side bringing, you know, coming to get my dad to be there with us. And you could feel this peace. So I know, and Christine, did you have that experience too when your parents passed?
Yes, I had when my mom was in there was a trauma that happened. So when she was in ICU, knowing that we were just waiting for everybody to gather with her, it was very, very heavily, very emotional. What I do love, and I will share this story, and I smile when I remember this, but so we were with my mom, and she's completely non-responsive, and she was off the life support. We were just holding for her. The nurse was outside, and she kept saying, you know what? I know every time you talk to her, I know every time you touch her, she's because her vitals just keep going up. And she says, like, and you know, because I can tell when you're having contact with your mom or sharing memories or whatever. So she says, your mom's doing actually quite well. I would suggest you might want to just step out and come back. And so we did. And she called me, she says, get here right away. And we got there just in time. But she said, soon as everybody left, my mom's vitals went down. It was almost like she kept holding on for us. So by honoring her, I think we had to leave because she couldn't leave. But I will say before we left, I looked up and the room was filled. And I saw my grandmother leaning over to my mom. And I'm like, oh, she's going because her mom's here. And that helped me leave the room because I knew that things were going to happen whether I'm there or not, but it's easier if it's just her. When we were finally there and it was at the last, I told Marie that says, I've never had this experience before and never again. But where I'm with three brothers and my in-laws and everybody was there. And I looked up and I saw a tall, kind of like a shadowed being behind me. I could feel them here, behind my dad, my brothers, my in-laws, and it was an angel. And I felt like this power in that room.
Mm.
And it was very overwhelming and very emotional, but then it was also so liberating because she was being taken, and it didn't matter we were there or not because she was taken care of, but there was spirit taking care of us. And I noticed because even my brother went like this to his arm, and I'm like, because the angel had his hand on, and I'm like, my brothers don't know what I do, but I feel
Now they
everybody
do.
now they do. Now they do.
They watch
But
this.
I was moved by that because there was just this calmness that kind of came through. And everything fell into place right after that, you know, and the grief and the reality of, oh my gosh, that just happened. Then that clicks in, and now you're in the mode, right? Now you're in grief. For my dad, it was very similar. My dad had different death. He was we finally got him into hospice. He only lasted a day. And everybody cleared out. It was just him and I. And I said, you know, you can go. That's going to get me emotional. And then the breathing started happening, that decline of the breath. I had to step out and I came in and he had passed. But when I walked in, I don't know how to describe it. It was just the whole room was calm, but full. And I
Yeah.
could still feel him in there, but I felt everybody there with him. And it's like I intruded. It's almost like I'm like, oops, sorry. Like, we're in the middle of leaving. It was almost like I intruded. And I just sat there, like I couldn't move forward because there were so many people there. And I just felt, the word I would use is elated. Like just like, oh, I could feel relief from him and his body. And the window was just partly opened. And I felt like they just took him right out. And it was beautiful, it was peaceful, but it was very sudden for me. Like, oh my gosh, it just happened. But at the same time, what a beautiful, beautiful experience to have. And I felt him just go. It's almost like he checked in, like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
ready to. Yeah. And I feel everything worked out in that way too, but they're not alone. They're not alone. And that I would say that 100%, they are not alone. Spirit is there. And it's such a affirming to us as loved ones. If we didn't make it there in time, we were not meant to be there. We were not meant for that moment, and not to hold that guilt. Oh, I should have been there for the last breath. You weren't meant to be. And sometimes their spirit needs that independence. Like my mom, she's like, your mom won't let go. And I knew my mom wanted to go, but she held on for us. And you go, okay, you know what? Like, they're ready. So I would, anybody that went through that, I understand that pain, that guilt, but I can assure you they were not alone. There were probably more than enough people there. And isn't that wonderful to know they were taken by their loved ones? It's
A crowded room.
I'm glad I was able to witness that. I'll say that for sure.
And it's a crowded room, because I thought that was an interesting conversation we had yesterday, where we were talking to someone and she was like, yeah, my dad passed away all alone. And then I remember you and me having that conversation going, yeah, but they weren't alone. Like, we weren't alone. And that peace and that calm, and it's amazing. So now I know when I hear that, I'm able to say that to somebody else because of the experience I've had. And then again, I'm only sharing from my experience, right? Has anybody else experienced that?
What's that?
So,
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Maria.
oh, I was just gonna say, like Christina and I had shared after, like, while our parents were getting, well, my dad, it's your dad or your mom, while they were getting ready to cross over, take that last breath, you feel the spirit world enter the room.
Mm.
And if you walk out and you're not there with them, the room is full of spirit, full of ancestors, full of angels. Like, it's packed. There's a party going on. They're like rejoicing. They're like, yes, you're joining us. So that was the question, if anybody else has experienced that.
Well, I actually, when my father passed, and this is many years ago now, 22 years ago. So I think the hospital environment can be a challenging environment when you've got nurses coming in and out as well. And there's all these medical things that are happening that need to happen. But I know when it was getting towards the end, and I think it's on the training and the education of the nurses too, to be able to guide the family. And it's a big responsibility. I didn't feel we necessarily had that until another older nurse came on just prior, who had been around that. So it was almost like a normalized honouring in a process, and was able to explain what was happening. But I know my father was talking to different ones standing behind. We're all gathered around his bed. And he was actually talking. He shouldn't have even been able to be coherent, the amount of painkillers that he was on. But he was addressing different ones standing behind us and saying, no, not yet. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So and we did have that feeling. I was involved in lots of his hospital visits because I lived in a bigger community. And so I was the bedside vigil girl, you know, that could feel my dad that night in pain. So I got up 1 o'clock in the morning, went in, and I was massaging, and I stayed with him every hour, wouldn't leave, would run to the bathroom and back again. And when I finally did go home, I'd literally been home 5 minutes for a quick shower, and I was going to rush straight back. I got the call that he'd passed. But when I came there, that exact feeling that you're talking about, there's this calm, but the air is full and thick, and it's filled. The room feels absolutely full. It's just a very surreal experience to move through. But yeah, very similar to as you spoke, Christine, that fullness and that feeling of peace. And I did feel, strangely enough, and I think this is where the guilt came in, a sense of euphoria, because I felt him lift off and he wasn't in pain. So I felt a freedom from witnessing that struggle, if that makes sense. And I remember feeling guilty that I was feeling happy that he had finally let go. So there's all these mixed emotions that we go through.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to navigate, even in the grieving process the months later, because we go back and go, oh, should I have said that? Did I do that right? Did I not say enough? So we naturally rewind, particularly if there was a dying process that we were witnessing as loved ones. And that can complicate the grief a bit as well, particularly if we've got feelings associated with guilt, or we have family members that we had conflict with in that very heightened, stressful environment. And look, let's face it, being in a hospital surrounding a loved one isn't a normal environment. You're sitting around a kitchen table at home, and then suddenly you're in a hospital sterile environment, still trying to love on them and nurture. It's stressful.
It is stressful. But I like that. It is true. The other night I said I felt elated. It is a moment. I don't know. It's that blend, that perfect connection where this is the beauty of death. Because it's not the end. It's not the end. And you have a brief second of that. You feel that, and then you almost like you just get right back into the moment of the room, and this decisions have to get made. But in that one moment, it's beautiful. There's a beauty in it, if you're lucky to see it.
Yeah, and I guess we can say that when we have someone who's lived a certain period of their life, so we kind of feel like they've had that lived experience. But I think that would shift and change if it's a child, or so grief's so very different depending on the loss or the circumstances. It's not a one size fits all.
No, it's not. See, I had that with my dad, but I didn't have that with my mom. I had struggled with my mom. So, because my dad suffered, his death made sense because there was an illness and a progression. My mom did not make sense to me. So it does change.
I find
Liliana, I know you were going to say something. Were you? I'm sorry.
Yes, you know what? I was going to say something because I was thinking about when my dad passed, and I think I mentioned this to Maria. I was there with another person, at the moment of, I was there. We kind of knew that it was going to happen at some time, but I have to say that we didn't know. And I was holding my dad's head, and I was giving him little drops of water, with a droplet. And at that moment, I just, I'll never forget it. When he passed, there was an actual physical sensation. I knew, I was holding him. I knew it's something that I felt that was living, it just felt like he's gone. And that's exactly what I said. I said, he's gone. He just passed, It was an actual physical feeling. But I also felt that he could see his parents, which were the ones that he really, I think, he really, well, dad and my sister, that he really was looking forward. And I know that there was mentioning that when he was very sick before, he did see her, he did see my little sister, around, and that was comforting. It's comforting to them, and I do feel that they do know at that point that it's time to go back home. And it could be, of course, very and everybody has different feelings about it. I felt that I was blessed. I felt that it was a gift to me. I was not like my other sisters that they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to have to be there when that happened. And for me, it was a gift. So that's, yeah, I just
Wow.
want.
So, Keshette, we were talking about grief and physical elements. Do you want to speak to that? Because I always find that super fascinating.
Yeah, I want to kind of briefly also touch on it's so lovely to hear some of you speak about your relationship with your folks. Not everyone has a close relationship with their folks. And I have a really good friend who in some ways lost her mom twice because she wasn't a mom. And my friend had to struggle through her childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and had already kind of healed from that separation. And then when her mom passed away, it was a whole new, different species of trauma and grief and what that looked like for her. And I think that's another way that people need to give themselves, permission to go through those motions of healing, even if you need to do it all over again. So yes, physically, I lost my stepdad, and a year later I lost my best friend. And not very many people talk about what happens to your body when your soul is going through such a tumultuous time and when your heart is broken. And I remember brushing my hair one day, and my whole right side of my head looked like someone ran with scissors and just cut the right side of my hair. And I literally had like a 7-inch difference from my right side to my left side. And I went to my girlfriend who does my hair, and I was like, look at this. Like, this is crazy. And this was months after the actual death. And I went through my mind, like, how could this have happened to my head? Why is it only the right side? Like, literally, if you took a comb and took it from the top of my forehead to the nape of my neck and just divided the two sides, it was only the right side that looked like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's grief. Oh my gosh, that's trauma. That's heartbreak. Like, that's not me processing everything, but my body is going through this like electrical, I don't know, disarray. And I also do hair and makeup. And sometimes when I'm working with clients and I'm styling their hair, I notice chunks of hair missing, eyelashes falling out. Weight loss or weight gain seem to be the obvious ones that people go to. But when it comes to like dry skin or hair, people don't always associate that with like grief, right? Or some people will, you'll all of a sudden have gray patches that you've never had before. And it's the shock. And so for those of you out there that have gone through these things or are going through these things, know that it's not always your hormones, but it's your soul really grieving, and it's your body feeling that grief. And so I just wanted to touch on that because I think that that's an anomaly that people don't realize. Your body's not always going to show it right away because it takes time for your body to go through its own grief and healing, but it will show in some way.
Oh my goodness, that is powerful. You just reminded me of like after my dad passed, I was invited to go to a meditation class. And people are like, it'll be really good for you to just quiet your mind and meditate, because I was getting like severe headaches and I just had to sleep. And then at one point, I remember calling Dayna because my body, I'd wake up and like my hands are still, but inside I could feel the fight or flight happening and my body wouldn't stop shaking. And because my dad had had a severe stroke 2 years ago, every day it was like, okay, how do we take care of him? What do we need to do? And it was like me and my sister together taking care of his medical cares every single day, always solving problems for 2 years. So after his passing, and I remember, Dana, you were so good at calming me down because I'm just like, I can't stop shaking. But then somebody was like, oh, you should go to meditation. And then in that moment, I realized the difference between grief and burnout, because I've been burnt out where, okay, I'm going to go to meditation and it's going to give me energy, and it always does. But in grief, that requires having energy to get into the car, to drive, to then have a conversation with someone. And it hit me so hard when I realized, whoa, grief is just like, it's a whole nother thing as opposed to burnout where you're so exhausted. Because I had zero to give. Like I really understood because I understand burnout because I've been there a couple of times, but when you're in grief, it's just they're not, I don't even have word. Like people would call, I wouldn't even answer the phone because that would require energy to use my vocal cords, and it would require energy to engage, and you don't realize how much energy there is in a conversation, a simple conversation like, how are you? Okay. Just to say the word okay takes energy. So I learned that. And then another thing that I learned, and it was through listening through David Kessler, because I really like the stuff that he has. No is a complete sentence. Because I remember somebody asked me to do something and I went, no. And then I got a dirty look because it wasn't, well, no. And then I had the explanation. I was just like, the energy in my physical body can give you one syllable, and that's no. And that's it. And I got nothing. And I didn't feel guilty. And I'm so grateful that I got to that point where I wasn't guilty for the no. I had no energy left to speak 5 more words to make you feel better because I said no.
The
It's
power
so
of no.
weird.
The power of no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important on Christmas Day, particularly if you've said yes, that you're going to someone else's place. And David Kessler always talks, because he was a parent, he's lost a child, he's gone through the grieving process and has worked with so many people that have been going through that grieving process. He always suggests, having an exit plan. So you go ahead, and it might be that you've got no energy left, you've done your time. He said even, on a phone, pretend you've got a message, or set beforehand that I've got other places I need to go. So you're micromanaging the expectations of the people that you're spending Christmas with and letting them know, I won't do the full time. I have to be somewhere else, even if you're just going home again. So giving yourself permission to say, okay, I've got nothing left in the tank. That's enough. And even just, as you said, no, Maria, and not forcing yourself to do something or feel something that you're not feeling in the moment, because all the family coming together, and I think everyone's going to be, there's this guilt attached, I think, with people going to Christmas, like I don't want to bring their Christmas down because I'm sad, but you've just lost your loved one. How can you be anything else but that? And there's going to be people at that Christmas dinner lunch that will be goofy and do all the normal things that they would normally do. You kind of just got to step back, I think, and observe and expect that people will still show up and be the same people. And allow yourself and give yourself permission to honor your loved one the way you choose to. And if that means you go home early, or you go for a walk, or perhaps you share memories, it's your grief. You get to decide.
I want to say, Keshette, I totally understand what you're talking about when you're talking about your hair being so different. My mom, I took care of my mom for 6 months before she passed away. She was in hospice care, but she lived with me. And, you know, the other thing that you were talking about, not really having a great relationship with your parents. I didn't have the greatest relationship with my mom, so it was actually very traumatic to be the one to take care of her for
Mm,
6 months.
yeah.
And in retrospect, I'm so grateful that I had that, and people told me that. They said you're going to be so grateful, but at the time I just thought, are you crazy? Like, this is so hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it was all sorts of emotions, and my hair turned very white, and it was started falling out. And Maria, what you were talking about, that shaking feeling, I mean, that's a trauma response, and animals actually have that when they feel traumatized, and they'll go under a bush and they'll do all that shaking and get it over with. But we don't do that because we feel like we have to hold it together for everybody else or even for ourselves. We've got to hold it together, and we're going to grieve later, and we're going to be angry later, and we're going to, right now I've got to do this and this and this, and, go to this doctor and fill this prescription, and whatever it happens to be. Um, and it was really a journey after that to heal that. It wasn't just healing the loss of a loved one. It wasn't just healing the loss of my mom.
Right.
It was this whole thing, like healing my relationship with her, um, having all these aha moments that happened after she passed. So, and now it sounds strange to say, but now she and I have a very loving relationship. I mean, my daughter just got married on Saturday, and we had pictures of the grandparents who had passed, like the wedding pictures of all three sets of grandparents who had passed, and luckily one set of grandparents was able to be there. And she was everywhere in that wedding, everywhere. 2 days before the wedding, I found a handkerchief with her name embroidered on it in blue as her something blue, and I gave that to my daughter as a gift. The healing happened after she passed.
Yeah.
So I just like to just give yourself grace and permission to experience however it is that you're experiencing things. And maybe if you have somebody pass that you didn't even take care of, but they're, in a home somewhere, and you just can't bring yourself to go see them, and then you pass, and they were, you have this trauma with that person. It it's it can be healed even after the person passes, and sometimes that's what it takes to experience that healing process. So, um, just to say to people not to feel guilty about however this is unfolding, however it works out, and just give yourself so much grace and give yourself some love and a break. I mean, for hospice care, they used to take her into respite care 1 week out of every month. And oh my God, the week was over and I was already planning the next week. I'm like, okay, you've got to take her during this week. And I would go live my life for a week and then come back. It was 24/7 care in my home. It was really stressful. So it's a forgiveness of self also sometimes with the passing of a loved one. And around Christmas time, it's the holidays, so it's amplified. Everything's amplified. It's larger and louder and more in your face. Um, so just breathe. Just breathe, and you will get through it. You absolutely will get through it in your own time. And your own time is your own time. There is no cutoff point.
Wow. So I want to say thank you, ladies, for sharing, because we've come to the end of our hour together, which, can you believe it? Feels like 5 minutes. But before we go, is there I don't know, one piece of advice you'd like to give people that are grieving during the holiday season, and also knowing, grief of a pet is hard too. Like there's different griefs. Maybe you've lost a job or a breakup. Like there's so many different type of grief. So honoring where you're at within your own griefs, but just going around the squares, the Zoom squares. Any last words before we close? I'll start with Dayna.
I think coming back to that sentence, no is a complete sentence, and not feeling that the should be doing that. I really think the honoring of your loved one and choosing how you're going to do that, particularly around Christmas Day or the holiday season. Give yourself the grace to do it your way and in your time.
Beautiful. Liliana?
Yes, thank you, ladies. It was really good to hear you all. The one thing that keeps coming to my mind is of course, grief is different for each one of us. We deal with it in a different way, and we go through different things. But one of the things that I hear a lot, and this is from the spirit world, when I'm connecting, there's a lot of guilt about, even just smiling, just being in a place where there is other people. Sometimes, that is really hard. It's really heartbreaking. And the spirit world knows, what we're feeling. And that's the message, please don't feel like you're not allowed to smile or to be okay for the other people in the family. They really want us to, to know that they're okay with us, being okay. So I think that, yes, if there is one thing that I like to tell people is that, that guilt is, they're not okay with us feeling that sense of, not it's not okay for us to even smile, to have a good thought, to play with a child. And that's us, it's how we're processing, the thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Beautiful. And Christine?
Yes, and thank you everybody today. This was very good and very cathartic as well. What I would say is don't judge your grief where you are and the grief that you have. And I like that you say it can be a pet, it can be any sense of grief of loss for yourself, if it's a job, marriage, a child, even if it's a sickness, a diagnosis. Don't judge your grief, don't judge others, and don't judge yourself where you are. And I always believe, and I'm learning this more and more, that when we have a memory, that spirit coming close to us. So don't feel guilty with that. Welcome that in. And even if it's just for a snippet, that's also spirit trying to help you heal too.
Thank you. And Keshette?
I'm going to repeat and add to what Michelle said. Breathe. Don't forget to breathe. Because so often, as we mentioned before, there's so much distraction. And it's so important for that breath and to give yourself permission to feel the feelings and don't apologize for the feelings that you feel. And I also want to say that statement, time heals. It's true. Time heals. Whether it's 2 years or 4 years or however long it may be, time does help the pain not be as severe. And drink the champagne, get the massage, do those things. I had a friend who gifted me like $1,000 bottle of champagne. And after my best friend passed away that New Year's, I opened it up in honor of her. I was like, I'm not hanging on to this. I'm going to drink the champagne. I'm going to enjoy it in honor of her. And so, so do the things. So.
And Michelle?
I'm going to say every piece of grief of any sort for any reason is unique and you can't do it wrong. So just give yourself the grace to do it how you do it. and it's okay. And just to really know that you're never alone. You're never the only person who's doing it the way you're doing it. We all do it differently, but somebody's done it. You know, the pieces are maybe not put together exactly the same order, but we've been there, and you're not by yourself. So just know that, and like a great big hug to people who are experiencing grief of any sort this holiday.
Dan, I think if you want to spend the day in bed, that's okay. Go spend the day in bed. Take care of yourself and, one day at a time, just like all the ladies said, breathe one day at a time and do you, whatever that looks like with no judgment. So I want to thank the ladies for being here. Thank you so much for this special Christmas episode on grief. And I just want to say goodbye to everybody. I will have all the ladies' contact information. And if you want to share your story and write into the podcast, or maybe reach out to one of the ladies on the screen that their story really connected with you, feel free to do that. All their contact information will be there. Right. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.